The first time I saw Caleb, he was breaking a man's nose in a dive bar, and I swear the room held its breath like it was waiting for the world to end. By the time the guy hit the floor, Caleb's smirk was already promising more chaos, and I was too busy choking on my beer to notice I'd fallen in love. It was a humid summer night in Hollow Creek, a nowhere town in upstate New York where dreams went to die and the air smelled like pine and regret. I was 23, a runaway from a family that didn't want me, scraping by as a mechanic in a garage that paid me in cash and dirty looks. My life was a cycle of oil stains, cheap whiskey, and avoiding mirrors because I didn't like the guy staring back. His name was Eli, and he was a mess scrawny, blonde, with eyes too big for his face and a heart too soft for this world. That's me. By the way, Eli Harper, the guy who thought he could outrun his own shadow. Caleb was different. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and made it feel smaller, like his presence sucked up all the oxygen. 6'2", built like he could bench press a truck, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. He was 25, the town's unofficial king of trouble, running a motorcycle repair shop that doubled as a front for something shadier. Everyone called him Alpha behind his back, not because he was a werewolf or some nonsense, but because he carried himself like he owned the ground he walked on. And in Hollow Creek, he pretty much did. That night in the bar, I was nursing my third beer, trying to blend into the peeling wallpaper, when Caleb's fight broke out. Some drunk had mouthed off about Caleb's brother, who died in a car accident 2 years prior. Caleb didn't hesitate. One punch, and the guy was out cold. The crowd scattered, but I stayed, frozen, watching Caleb wipe blood from his knuckles like it was just another Tuesday. Then his eyes met mine across the room, blue, sharp, like they could see through my skin to the secrets I hadn't told anyone. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just held my gaze until I felt like I was drowning. "You're new," he said later, sliding into the stool next to me like we were old friends. His voice was low, rough, like gravel under tires. "What's your deal?" "No deal," I muttered, staring at my beer. "Just passing through." He laughed, a sound that felt like a spark in the dark. "Nobody passes through Hollow Creek. Kid. You're here. You're stuck." I should have walked away then. Should have packed my bag and hitched a ride out of town before Caleb's gravity pulled me in. But I didn't. Instead, I let him buy me another drink. Let him lean too close. Let his hand brush mine when he passed me a cigarette. By the end of the night, I was dizzy not from the alcohol, but from the way he looked at me, like I was something worth keeping. The next few weeks were a blur. Caleb was everywhere, like he'd decided I was his new project. He'd show up at the garage, leaning against my workbench with that infuriating smirk, tossing me tools I didn't ask for. He'd drag me to late-night drives on his motorcycle, the wind whipping past us as we tore through back roads. My arms wrapped around his waist like I was holding on to life itself. He talked about everything: his brother, his shop, the fights he'd won, the ones he'd lost, but never about the shadows in his eyes or the rumors about what he really did for money. I didn't ask. I was too busy falling, too busy memorizing the way his laugh sounded like thunder, the way his fingers lingered on my wrist when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I told myself it was nothing, that Caleb was just bored, that guys like him didn't fall for guys like me. I was wrong. One night, under a sky so clear it felt like the stars were watching, he kissed me. We were parked by Lake Hollow, the water black and still, the world so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. He'd been talking about his brother again, his voice cracking in a way that made my chest ache. Then he stopped, turned to me, and pressed his lips to mine. It wasn't soft or sweet, it was desperate, like he was trying to anchor himself to something real. I kissed him back, my hands tangled in his jacket, my heart screaming that this was a mistake but my body begging for more. Stay. He whispered against my mouth, his breath warm and ragged. Don't run. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because even then, I knew Caleb wasn't just asking for a night or a week, was asking for something I wasn't sure I could give. Freedom was all I had left, and loving him felt like handing over the key to my cage. But I stayed. God help me, I stayed. The days after that kiss were a fever dream. Caleb was a storm, and I was caught in it, helpless and willing. We'd sneak away to the woods, to abandoned barns, to the back of his shop, stealing moments that felt like stolen treasure. He'd pin me against walls, his hands rough but his eyes soft, whispering things that made my skin burn. You're mine, he'd say, and I'd laugh it off. But deep down, I wanted it to be true. Hollow Creek, though, wasn't kind to secrets. The town was small, and eyes were everywhere. Whispers started about Caleb, about me, about us. I didn't care at first. I was too wrapped up in him, in the way he made me feel like I was more than a runaway, more than a nobody. But Caleb cared. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened when we passed certain people, the way he'd pull his hand from mine if someone got too close. You don't get it, Eli, he said one night, his voice sharp as we sat in his truck. This tonit chews up people like us. Then let's leave. I shot back, half joking, half hoping. Go somewhere nobody knows us. He looked at me, his eyes dark with something I couldn't name. You think it's that easy? You think I can just walk away? I didn't understand then. I didn't know about the debts he owed, the deals he'd made, the blood on his hands. Caleb wasn't just the town's golden boy, was its prisoner, tied to men who didn't play by rules. And I was about to learn that loving him came with a price. One night, everything changed. We were at his shop, tangled up in each other on an old couch, when the door burst open. 3 men walked in, their faces hard, their eyes cold. The leader, a guy named Marcus with a scar across his cheek, looked at me like I was a bug he wanted to squash. Caleb, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. This the kid you're risking everything for? Caleb stood, putting himself between me and them, his body tense. He's got nothing to do with this. Marcus laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. Oh, he's got everything to do with it now. I didn't know what they wanted, not then, but I felt the shift, the way the air turned heavy, the way Caleb's hand shook when he reached for mine. That night, as Marcus and his men left, Caleb turned to me, his face pale, his eyes haunted. You need to go, he said, his voice breaking. Get out of Hollow Creek. Tonight. I laughed, thinking he was joking. What? No way. I'm not leaving you. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight enough to hurt. Eli, listen to me. You stay, and you're dead. I won't let that happen. I didn't listen. I didn't run. And by morning, I wasn't free anymore. The next morning, I woke up in Caleb's bed, his arms slung over my waist, his breath warm against my neck. For a moment, I let myself believe we were just 2 guys in love, not 2 idiots caught in a trap we couldn't see. But the world doesn't care about moments. Marcus's visit wasn't a warning, it was a promise. By noon, Caleb's phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts from numbers he didn't save. Calls he didn't answer. He tried to play it cool. But I saw the way his hands shook when he thought I wasn't looking. I should have pushed him to talk. Should have demanded answers. But I was too scared of breaking whatever fragile thing we had. So I stayed quiet. And that was my first mistake. Hollow Creek was a small town, but it had big secrets. Caleb's shop wasn't just a place to fix bikes, it was a front for Marcus's crew. A network of lowlifes who moved drugs and money through the backroads of upstate New York. Caleb wasn't some mastermind. He was just a guy who'd made bad choices to keep his brother's memory alive. To keep the shop his brother loved from going under. But debts like that don't stay small. They grow. And they swallow you whole. Tell me what's going on. I said that afternoon, cornering him in the shop as he worked on a busted Harley. Who's Marcus? Why's he after you? Caleb didn't look up. His wrench moving faster than it needed to. It's nothing you need to worry about. Bullshit. I snapped, grabbing his arm. You told me to run last night. You don't get to act like it's nothing now. He froze, his eyes meeting mine, and for the first time, I saw fear in them. Not anger, not defiance fear. Eli, you don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. I pleaded, my voice softer. Let me in. He didn't. Instead, he kissed me, hard and desperate, like he was trying to say everything he couldn't with words. I let him, because I was weak, because his touch was the only thing that made sense in a world that was starting to feel like a cage. That night, we went to the lake again, our spot, the one place where the world couldn't touch us. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the air was thick with the threat of rain. Caleb was quieter than usual, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. I never meant for you to get caught up in this, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could keep you separate, keep you safe. Safe from what? I asked, my heart pounding. Caleb, what did you do? He looked at me then, his eyes raw, like he'd been stripped bare. I owe Marcus. A lot. My brother got in deep before he died. I took it on, thought I could handle it. But now, he trailed off, swallowing hard. Now they know about you. The words hit me like a punch. What does that mean? It means they'll use you to get to me, he said, his voice breaking. They'll hurt you, Eli, to make me pay. I should have been scared. I should have run right then, packed my bag and disappeared like I'd done 100 times before. But I looked at Caleb, at the way his hands shook, at the way his eyes begged me to stay, and I couldn't. I loved him, and love makes you stupid. Then we fight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Together. He laughed, a bitter sound that cut through the night. You don't fight guys like Marcus. You survive them. But I wasn't listening. I was already in too deep, already imagining some heroic stand where we'd beat the odds, where love would be enough. I was wrong, of course, but I didn't know it yet. The next few days were a haze of tension. Caleb was jumpy, always looking over his shoulder, always keeping me close like he was afraid I'd vanish. I started noticing cars that followed us too long, faces that lingered in crowds, whispers that stopped when I got too close. Hollow Creek wasn't just a town anymore. It was a trap, and we were the bait. One night, Caleb took me to an old cabin in the woods, a place his brother used to go to clear his head. It was run down, the kind of place where the walls creaked and the air smelled like damp wood and forgotten dreams. We sat on the floor, a single lantern casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick with guilt. I should have let you go that first night. Should have let you walk away. Don't, I said, grabbing his hand. I chose this. I chose you. He looked at me, his eyes wet, and for a moment, I thought he'd break. But then he pulled me close, his lips crashing into mine, and we lost ourselves in each other, the world outside fading to nothing. It was a desperate, hungry kiss, full of all the things we couldn't say, all the fears we couldn't face. I clung to him, my hands fisted in his shirt, my heart racing like it was trying to outrun the truth. We stayed there, tangled up in each other, until the sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I wanted to believe we could stay like that forever, hidden away in that cabin, safe from the world. But the world always finds you. When we got back to town, Marcus was waiting, not in person, but in the form of a note slipped under Caleb's door, written in sharp, angry letters. You can't protect him forever. My stomach dropped, and Caleb's face went white. He didn't say anything, just crumpled the note and pulled me inside, locking the door like it could keep the danger out. We need a plan, I said, trying to sound brave, but my voice shook. We can't just wait for them to come for us. Caleb didn't answer right away. He sat on the couch, his head in his hands, and for the first time, I saw him not as the untouchable alpha, but as a man breaking under the weight of his choices. I've got a plan, he said finally, his voice low. But you're not gonna like it. Caleb's plan was a suicide mission dressed up as hope, and I was too in love to see it. He wanted to buy our freedom with a deal that could bury us both. The cabin was our sanctuary for exactly one night before reality crashed in. Caleb's plan was to make one last run for Marcusa delivery. Something big. Something that would clear his debt and, by extension, keep me safe. He didn't tell me the details, just that it was dangerous, and that if it went wrong, we'd both be running for the rest of our lives. Or worse. You're not doing this alone, I said, my voice sharp as I grabbed his arm. We were back at his shop, the air thick with the smell of oil and fear. If you're in, I'm in. He shook his head, his jaw tight. Eli, this isn't your fight. It's been my fight since the moment I stayed. I shot back, my heart pounding. You don't get to decide what I can handle. He looked at me, his blue eyes stormy with guilt and something softer, something that made my chest ache. I can't lose you, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Not you. I didn't have an answer for that, not one that wouldn't break us both. So I kissed him instead, hard and desperate, like I could pour all my fear and love into him and make it enough. He kissed me back, his hands rough on my hips, his body pressing against mine like he was trying to memorize me. We didn't say it, but we both knew this could be the last time we got to be this close. The job was set for the next night, a drop-off in a warehouse an hour outside Hollow Creek. Caleb wouldn't tell me what he was moving, but I saw the way his hands shook when he loaded the duffel bag into his truck. I saw the gun he tucked into his waistband, the one he thought I didn't notice. I wasn't stupid, I knew it was drugs. Probably enough to put us both away for life if we got caught. But I didn't care about the risk. Not as much as I cared about him. We drove in silence. The only sound the hum of the engine and the thud of my heart. The warehouse was a hulking shadow in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but gravel and ghosts. Caleb parked 100 yards out, his eyes scanning the darkness like a predator waiting for the trap to spring. Stay here, he said, his voice low and hard. If anything goes wrong, you drive. Don't look back. No way, I said, grabbing his hand. We're in this together. Remember? He cursed under his breath. But he didn't argue. He knew me well enough by now to know I wasn't staying behind. We walked toward the warehouse, the duffel bag heavy on his shoulder, my pulse hammering in my ears. The air was cold, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones and makes you feel like you're already dead. Inside, Marcus was waiting with two of his guys, their faces lit by the dim glow of a single bulb. The place smelled like rust and desperation, and Marcus's smile was all teeth, no warmth. You're late, he said, his eyes flicking to me. And you brought company. He's not part of this, Caleb said, stepping in front of me. Let's just do the deal. Marcus laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Oh, he's part of it now. Alpha. You made sure of that. The exchange was too quick. Caleb handed over the bag, and Marcus tossed him a smaller one, presumably cash. But I saw the way Marcus's eyes lingered on me, the way his men shifted like they were waiting for a signal. My stomach twisted, and I grabbed Caleb's arm, my fingers digging into his skin. We're done here, Caleb said, his voice steady despite the tension radiating off him. Debts paid. Marcus tilted his head, his smile fading. You think one job wipes the slate clean? You're dumber than I thought. Caleb froze, and I felt the world tilt. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice low. Dangerous. You're in too deep, kid, Marcus said, stepping closer. You don't walk away from me. Not now. Not ever. I saw it then, the trap we'd walked into. This wasn't about clearing a debt. It was about keeping Caleb on a leash. And I was the collateral. Marcus didn't need to say it. His eyes said it all. If Caleb tried to walk, they'd come for me. Caleb's hand went to his gun, but I grabbed his wrist, my heart racing. Don't, I whispered. Not here. He looked at me, his eyes wild, and for a moment, I thought he'd pull the trigger anyway. But he didn't. He let me pull him back, and we walked out of that warehouse, the weight of Marcus's words heavy between us. Back in the truck, Caleb didn't speak. He just drove, his knuckles white on the wheel, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might break. I wanted to say something, anything, to make it better. But what do you say when you realize you're both trapped in a cage you built together? We'll figure this out, I said finally, my voice softer than I meant it to be. We'll find a way. He didn't answer, but his hand found mine, his fingers lacing through my own like they were the only thing keeping him grounded. We drove back to Hollow Creek, the night pressing in around us, and I wondered if we'd ever feel free again. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and planning. Caleb was different, harder, colder, like he was bracing for a fight he knew he couldn't win. He started teaching me things I never wanted to learn: how to spot a tail, how to lose one, how to hold a gun without shaking. He didn't say it, but I knew he was preparing me for the day he might not be there. One night, we went back to the lake, our lake, and sat on the hood of his truck, the stars brighter than they had any right to be. If I could go back, he said, his voice raw, I'd never have let you walk into that bar. I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't feel like me. If I could go back, I'd walk in faster. He looked at me, his eyes soft for the first time in days, and pulled me close. His kiss was slow, tender, like he was trying to say goodbye without saying the words. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, my heart breaking because I knew we were running out of time. I used to think freedom was a place you could run to, but by the time Marcus's shadow loomed over us, I realized it's just a feeling you lose. Caleb and I were about to learn how much we'd already given up. The days after the warehouse were like living in a pressure cooker. Caleb was on edge, checking his mirrors every time we drove, locking the shop at night like it could keep the world out. I wasn't much better, jumping at every noise, seeing Marcus's face in every stranger's glance. Hollow Creek felt smaller, like the town itself was closing in, and the only thing keeping me sane was Caleb's hand in mine, his touch a reminder that we were still fighting. He didn't talk about the deal, but I saw the toll it took. The bags under his eyes, the way he'd flinch when his phone buzzed, the way he'd hold me a little too tight, like he was afraid I'd slip away. I wanted to hate him for dragging me into this, but I couldn't. Every time I looked at him, I saw the boy who'd kissed me by the lake, who'd whispered, "Stay," like it was a prayer. I loved him too much to let him face this alone. We need to get out, I said one night, sitting on the floor of his shop, a half-empty bottle of whiskey between us. Not just talk about it. Actually leave. Caleb shook his head, his eyes fixed on the bottle. You don't get it, Eli. Marcus doesn't let people go. He's got eyes everywhere here. The next town over. Probably the whole damn state. Then we go further, I said, my voice sharp with desperation. Canada, Mexico, anywhere. We disappear. He looked at me, his expression torn between hope and defeat. And what? Spend our lives looking over our shoulders. That's not living. It's better than dying. I shot back, my throat tight. Or watching you die. He didn't answer, just took a swig of whiskey and passed me the bottle. I drank, the burn of it grounding me, but it didn't drown the fear. We were running out of options, and we both knew it. The next day, Caleb got a call. Not Marcus, but one of his guys. A voice I didn't recognize, but that made Caleb's face go pale. They wanted another job, something smaller. A test to see if he'd stay in line. He didn't tell me the details, just said he had to go alone this time. I argued, begged, nearly threw his keys out the window, but he just kissed my forehead and said, I'll be back by morning. He wasn't. Morning came, and the shop was empty. His truck was gone. His phone went straight to voicemail, and my heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. I waited, pacing the floor, checking my phone every 5 seconds, telling myself he was fine. He was just late. He'd walk through the door any minute with that smirk and a story. But by noon, I knew something was wrong. I drove to the lake, to the cabin, to every place we'd ever gone together. But he wasn't there. The town felt like it was mocking me. Every face a stranger, every shadow a threat. I went back to the shop, my hands shaking as I searched his desk, his files, anything that might tell me where he'd gone. That's when I found a note, tucked under a stack of invoices, in Caleb's messy handwriting. If I'm not back, check the cabin. I'm sorry. My blood ran cold. I drove to the cabin faster than I'd ever driven, the truck skidding on the dirt road, my heart screaming his name. The place was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Inside, I found his jacket on the couch, a half-finished cigarette in the ashtray, and another note, Eli. I had to make a choice. Keep you safe. Don't come after me. I didn't listen. Couldn't. I tore through the cabin, looking for anything, a clue, a sign, a reason he'd leave me like this. In the bedroom, under the floorboard, I found a duffel bag. Inside was cash, a fake ID with my picture but a different name, and a burner phone with one number programmed in. No note this time, just the truth staring me in the face. Caleb had planned to run, but he'd done it without me. I called the number, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. It rang twice before a voice answered, not Caleb, but someone else. Someone calm. Too calm. He's with us. The voice said. You want him back. You do exactly what I say. It was Marcus. Of course it was. He didn't gloat. Didn't threaten. Just laid out the terms like he was ordering coffee. Caleb had tried to double-cross him. Tried to take the money from the last job and run. Marcus caught him. And now I was the leverage. If I wanted Caleb alive, I had to deliver something, a package, a location, a time. No details, just a promise that if I didn't show, Caleb was dead. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, the cabin spinning around me. I wanted to scream, to break something, to find Caleb and shake him for thinking he could leave me behind. But more than that, I wanted him safe. I wanted us safe. Together. The way we were supposed to be. I drove back to town. The package in the passenger seat. My mind racing. I didn't know what was in it. Didn't want to know. But I knew it was bad. Knew it was the kind of thing that could ruin us both. But I didn't have a choice. Marcus had made sure of that. The drop was at an old quarry. A place so desolate it felt like the edge of the world. I walked in alone. The package heavy in my hands. My heart heavier. Marcus was there. Flanked by his men. And Caleb was there too. On his knees. Blood on his face. His eyes locked on mine. He didn't say anything. But I saw it all in his gaze. Fear. Love. Regret. "You're a good kid, Eli," Marcus said, taking the package. "Too good for him." "Let him go," I said, my voice steady despite the way my hands shook. "You got what you wanted." Marcus smiled. That same cold smile. "Not quite. I thought love was supposed to set you free. But standing in that quarry with Caleb's life in my hands felt like a chain around my neck." Marcus's smile told me I'd already lost, even if I didn't know how yet. The quarry was a graveyard of rocks and shadows, the air thick with dust and dread. Caleb was on his knees, his hands bound, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. He didn't look like the alpha anymore, just a man, broken and scared, his eyes pleading with me to run. But I couldn't. I'd walked into this trap with my eyes open. The package in my hands, a ticking bomb I didn't understand. "Eli," Caleb rasped, his voice raw. "Get out of here. Now." "Shut up," I snapped, my voice shaking as I stepped closer, the package heavy in my arms. Marcus's men flanked him, their guns glinting in the moonlight, a reminder that one wrong move could end us both. Marcus took the package, his eyes never leaving mine. "You're loyal," he said, almost like he was impressed. "That's rare. Stupid, but rare." "Just let him go," I said, my heart pounding so hard I thought it'd break my ribs. "You have what you want." He opened the package, glanced inside, and nodded to one of his guys. For a moment, I thought it was over, that he'd keep his word. Then he laughed, a sound that cut deeper than any knife. "You think this is the end, kid? This is just the beginning." Before I could react, one of his men grabbed me, wrenching my arms behind my back. Caleb lunged, shouting my name, but another guy knocked him down with the butt of a gun. I screamed, struggling against the hands holding me. But it was no use. Marcus had planned this, had always planned this. The package wasn't freedom. It was a test. And we'd failed. "You're both mine now," Marcus said, crouching in front of Caleb, who was spitting blood onto the gravel. "You tried to run, Alpha. That was a mistake. Now your boy pays for it." Caleb's eyes met mine, full of guilt and fury, and I knew he was blaming himself. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that I'd chosen this, that I'd do it again if it meant keeping him alive. But the words wouldn't come. Not with Marcus's men dragging me toward a van. Not with Caleb's shouts echoing in my ears. They didn't take us far, just to a warehouse on the edge of town. A place that reeked of oil and fear. They tied us up, back to back, our wrists bound with zip ties that cut into our skin. Caleb's breathing was ragged, his head leaning against mine, and I could feel the warmth of him, the only thing keeping me from falling apart. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I could fix this." "You tried," I said, my throat tight. "That's enough." But it wasn't. Marcus came in an hour later, his boots echoing on the concrete floor. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Just laid it out. We worked for him now. Both of us. Caleb would keep running jobs, and I'd be his insurance, his leverage to keep Caleb in line. If either of us stepped out of line, the other would pay. You can't do this, I said, my voice hoarse. We'll go to the cops. Marcus laughed, leaning close enough that I could smell the cigarette smoke on his breath. You think the cops in this town aren't mine? You're in my world now, kid. Caleb's hand found mine behind our backs, his fingers squeezing tight. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me grounded, to remind me we were still here, still together. Marcus left us there, tied up and helpless, with a promise to be back by morning with our first job. The hours dragged on, the warehouse cold and quiet except for our breathing. Caleb didn't talk much, just kept his head pressed against mine, his voice low when he finally spoke. I love you, he said, so soft I almost didn't hear it. I should have said it sooner. I love you too, I whispered back, my eyes burning. Always will. We didn't sleep, just sat there, holding onto each other in the dark, waiting for morning and whatever hell it would bring. When the sun started to rise, filtering through the warehouse's cracked windows, I felt Caleb's hand tighten in mine, a silent promise that we'd find a way out. Together. But Marcus was true to his word. He came back at dawn, his men cutting our ties and shoving us toward a table covered in maps and burner phones. The job was simple on the surface, another delivery, another drop, but the weight of it was crushing. Caleb would drive, I'd ride along, and Marcus's men would follow, making sure we didn't run. The drive was silent, the road stretching out like a noose tightening around us. Caleb's hands were steady on the wheel, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him we'd be okay, but the words felt hollow even in my head. The drop went smoother than I expected. No guns, no blood, just a quick exchange in a parking lot outside a gas station. But when we got back to the warehouse, Marcus was waiting, his smile sharper than ever. Good boys, he said, like we were dogs who'd learned to heel. Keep this up, and you might live long enough to hate me. That night, back at Caleb's shop, we didn't talk about the job. We didn't talk about Marcus or the trap we were in. We just held each other, his arms around me, my face buried in his chest, the world outside fading for a few stolen hours. It wasn't freedom, but it was close enough. I used to dream of running away with Caleb, just the two of us against the world. But dreams don't survive men like Marcus. By the time we realized we were his pawns, the board was already set, and we were losing. The jobs kept coming, each one a little uglier, a little heavier. Deliveries, pickups, meetings in places that smelled like desperation and gunpowder. Caleb took the lead, his face hard, his hands steady, but I saw the cracks, his sleepless nights, the way he'd flinch at sudden noises, the way he'd hold me like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. I wasn't much better, my nerves frayed, my heart a constant ache. But we had each other, and that had to be enough. Marcus kept us on a short leash, his men always watching, always reminding us what was at stake. If Caleb messed up, to pay. If I tried to run, Caleb would bleed. It was a sick game, and Marcus played it like a master, his voice calm but his threats sharp enough to cut. You're a team now, he'd say, smirking. Ain't that sweet? We hated it, but we did it. Every job, every drop, every lie we told ourselves to get through the night. Caleb taught me how to move quietly, how to spot a tail, how to keep my face blank even when my heart was screaming. I taught him how to laugh again, even if it was just for a moment, even if it was just to keep us sane. One night, after a job that left us both shaking, we went back to the lake. It wasn't our lake anymore. Marcus had tainted it. Like he'd tainted everything, but it was still the only place we could breathe. We sat on the shore, the water lapping at our feet, the stars too bright for the mess we were in. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice barely above the waves. "It's killing us." Caleb didn't look at me, just stared at the water, his hands clenched into fists. "I know," he said. "But if we run, he'll find us. He always does." "Then we don't run," I said, my heart racing with an idea that felt like madness. "We fight. We take him down." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You think we can touch him? He's got half the town in his pocket, cops, judges, everyone." "Then we find someone he doesn't own," I said, leaning closer. "Someone who wants him gone as much as we do." It was a long shot, a desperate plan born from too many sleepless nights and too much love. But Caleb's eyes met mine, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of hope. "You're crazy," he said, but he was smiling. "Just a little, just enough." We started small, gathering information, listening to whispers in bars and backrooms. There were others people Marcus had burned, people who'd lost too much to his empire. A bartender who'd lost a brother to an overdose. A cop who wasn't as dirty as the rest. A hacker who owed Caleb a favor from years back. We built a network, fragile but growing, each piece a step toward taking Marcus down. It wasn't easy. Every move was a risk, every conversation a gamble. Marcus's men were everywhere, and we had to be careful, meeting in secret, using burner phones, covering our tracks. Caleb was better at it than I was, his years in the game giving him an edge. But I learned fast. I had two for him, for us. One night, we met the hacker in an old diner, the kind of place where the coffee was bad and the secrets were worse. He slid us a USB drive, his hands shaking. "This is everything," he said. "Bank records, names, dates. Enough to bury Marcus if you can get it to the right people." Caleb took the drive, his jaw tight. "Who are the right people?" The hacker shrugged. "Feds. Maybe. Someone out of state. Marcus's reach isn't infinite." We drove back to the shop, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. Caleb didn't say much, just held my hand as we sat on the couch, the weight of what we were doing settling over us like fog. "If we do this," he said, "there's no going back." "I know," I said, leaning into him. "But I'm not losing you." "Not to him." He kissed me then, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize me all over again. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, my heart pounding with fear and hope and love. We didn't know if we'd win, didn't know if we'd even survive, but we had a chance, and that was more than we'd had in weeks. The next day, we made copies of the drive, sent them to every contact we trusted, feds in Albany, a reporter in Syracuse, even a lawyer who'd crossed Marcus years ago. We didn't know who'd bite, didn't know who'd sell us out, but we had to try. For the first time, we weren't just surviving, we were fighting. That night, we went back to the cabin, our last safe place. We didn't talk about the drive or Marcus or the future. We just held each other, the world quiet for once, the stars watching over us like they always had. It wasn't freedom, but it was close enough. Hope is a dangerous thing when you're in love with a man like Caleb. It makes you believe you can outrun fate. But fate's faster, and it was catching up. The USB drive was our lifeline, a fragile thread we hoped could pull us out of Marcus's grip. We'd sent it out, scattered it like seeds in a storm, praying something would take root. But hope doesn't stop bullets, and Marcus wasn't the kind of man to let betrayal slide. We knew he'd come for us. The only question was when. Caleb was a ghost of himself, his eyes hollow, his hands never far from the gun he kept hidden. I wasn't much better, jumping at shadows. My dreams filled with Caleb's blood on my hands. But we kept moving, kept planning, kept holding on to each other like it could keep the world at bay. The shop was our base, the lake our refuge, the cabin our last stand. We didn't talk about it, but we both knew one wrong move, and we were done. The first sign of trouble came a week after we sent the drive. A car followed us too long. A face lingered outside the shop. A phone call with no one on the other end. Marcus was circling, tightening the noose, and we could feel it. Caleb started sleeping with the gun under his pillow, and I started checking the locks twice, 3 times, every night. We need to be ready to run, I said one evening, sitting on the shop's workbench, watching Caleb clean a bike that didn't need cleaning. If this goes south, we can't stay here. He didn't look up, his hands moving over the chrome like it could keep his mind off the truth. If it goes south, running won't help. Then we fight, I said, my voice sharp. We've got people on our side now. We're not alone. He looked at me then, his eyes soft but tired. You're too good for this, Eli. Too good for me. I slid off the bench, grabbing his face, forcing him to meet my gaze. Don't you dare say that. We're in this together, Caleb. You and me. He kissed me, his lips rough and desperate, like he was trying to hold onto something he was afraid he'd lose. I kissed him back, my hands fisted in his jacket, my heart screaming that we'd make it, that we had to. We stayed like that, tangled up in each other, until the world felt far away, until it was just us and the quiet. But the quiet never lasts. The next morning, the shop's phone rang, and Caleb's face went pale when he answered. It wasn't Marcus, it was the cop we'd reached out to, the one who wasn't on Marcus's payroll. They got the drive, he said, his voice low. Feds are moving, but Marcus knows. You need to get out. Now. We didn't hesitate. We grabbed what we could cash. Clothes, the burner phone, and headed for the cabin. It was a risk, going back to a place Marcus knew, but it was the only place we could think to go. The drive was silent, Caleb's hand on my knee, my heart in my throat. We didn't know if the feds would move fast enough. Didn't know if Marcus would find us first. The cabin was as we'd left it, creaking and cold, but it felt like home. We barricaded the door, checked the windows, and sat on the floor, the burner phone between us. Caleb's hand found mine, his fingers tight, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. If they come for us, he said, his voice low, you run. Promise me. No, I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. I'm not leaving you. Not now. Not ever. He didn't argue, just pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. We sat there, waiting, the world holding its breath. The phone didn't ring. The feds didn't call. But we heard the crunch of gravel outside just as the sun started to set. Caleb was up in a second, gun in hand, his body between me and the door. Stay back, he whispered, but I was already moving, grabbing a knife from the kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The door burst open, and Marcus's men stormed in, 3 of them, armed, their faces hard. Caleb fired first, the sound deafening in the small space, and one of them went down, clutching his leg. I dove behind the couch, my knife useless but my hands steady, my mind screaming Caleb's name. It was chaos, gunshots, shouts, the smell of blood and fear. Caleb fought like a man possessed, his body a shield, his voice yelling for me to run. I couldn't. I threw the knife, catching one guy in the shoulder, buying us a second to move. We made it to the back door, stumbling into the woods, the sound of pursuit close behind. We ran, branches tearing at our skin, our breaths ragged. Caleb's hand was in mine, pulling me forward, his voice a steady chant of keep going, keep going. We didn't know where we were headed, just that we had to move, had to survive. The woods were dark, the air cold, but we were together, and that was enough. We found a stream, hid in the shadows, and waited. The men didn't find us. Not that night. We stayed there, shivering, holding each other, until the sun rose. The burner phone buzzed once. A text from the cop. Feds hit Marcus's place. He's down. Stay low. We didn't believe it. Not at first. But as the days passed, the news trickled in arrests, raids, Marcus's empire crumbling. We stayed hidden, moving from place to place, never staying long, never trusting the quiet. But we had each other, and slowly, the weight started to lift. Freedom isn't a place or a moment, it's the second you realize you're not running anymore. For Caleb and me, that second came slowly, like dawn after a night that tried to kill us. The woods were our shelter for days, then weeks, as we moved from one hiding spot to another, a friend's basement, a motel off the highway, a cabin deeper in the mountains. Marcus was gone, his empire gutted by the feds, but we didn't trust it. We'd learned the hard way that men like him leave echoes, and we weren't ready to believe the world was safe. Caleb was quieter now, his smirk softer, his hands always finding mine like he needed to know I was still there. I was different too, harder, maybe, but not broken. We'd survived the quarry, the warehouse, the woods. We'd survived Marcus. And every night, when we lay down together, his arms around me, my head on his chest, I felt like we could survive anything. The cop kept in touch. His text short but steady, more arrests. You're clear. We didn't believe him at first, but the news backed him up, headlines about a drug ring busted. Names we recognized, faces we'd feared. Marcus was in custody, his men scattered or locked up. Hollow Creek was just a town again, not a cage. We didn't go back right away. We stayed in the mountains, in a cabin that smelled like pine and hope, rebuilding what we'd almost lost. Caleb started smiling again, his laugh a little less sharp, his eyes a little less haunted. I started dreaming again, not of running, but of staying off a life where we didn't have to look over our shoulders. One night, by a fire we'd built ourselves, Caleb pulled me close, his lips brushing my ear. You stayed, he said, his voice soft, like he still couldn't believe it. You didn't run. Neither did you, I said, my hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under my palm. We're free now. He kissed me, slow and deep, like he was tasting the truth of it. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, my heart full of him. The stars were out, the fire crackling, and for the first time, the world felt like it might let us be. We didn't stay in Hollow Creek. Too many ghosts, too many memories of nights we'd rather forget. We moved west, to a small town in Oregon where the air smelled like rain and second chances. Caleb opened a new shop, fixing bikes with hands that didn't shake anymore. I got a job at a bookstore, surrounded by stories that weren't ours. Stories where the heroes always won. We bought a house. Nothing fancy, just a place with a porch and a view of the mountains. We'd sit there at night, sharing a beer, his hand in mine, the world quiet around us. We didn't talk about Marcus, didn't talk about the jobs or the nights we thought we'd lose each other. We talked about the future, about trips we'd take, about the dog we'd get, about the life we were building. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Caleb pulled me onto his lap, his arms strong around me. I love you, he said, his voice steady, like he'd finally found the words. Always will. I love you too, I said, my forehead against his, my heart so full it hurt. Always. We weren't the same men we'd been in Hollow Creek. We were scarred. Maybe, but stronger for it. We'd fought for this, bled for it. And now it was ours, a life where stay wasn't a plea but a promise. The Alpha had whispered it in the dark. And by morning, we were free. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.